time for the I Am Collective on the O Factor. It's time to rise up against gender-based violence, to feel safe, to heal, and to create a safe future. Together.
Thank you so much, Liren, for that bit of good news. 23 minutes after 10 o'clock, as we conclude the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we are honored to be joined by Alexis Searle, who is a dedicated member of the I Am Collective. We has partnered with them from the very start of the 16 days of activism. The I Am Collective, of course, is an information technology company that is committed to taking a preventative approach to GBV in the South African context, and of course, influencing how Africa deals with this femicide issue, using research, real stories, the power of collective sharing, and they facilitate conversations that encourage healing and drive a real societal change. The I Am Collective does believe that the current narrative surrounding GBV in South Africa has to shift by creating data-supported resources and safe spaces for storytelling, just like we facilitated over the past 2 weeks right here on the O Factor, and partnering with clinician-led conversations with other organizations that are really focused on shifting this narrative and making sure that the next generation has a very different conversation to what we're having. So today, Alexis is here to help us reflect on the successes of this campaign, focusing on empowerment and really community-driven solution, and the critical role platforms like the I Am Collective and Grit GBV play in changing the narrative. Alexis, welcome to the O Factor. I mean, we've spoken virtually as we're working on this campaign. You and your team really so intentional about making sure that each conversation we've had on air was an empowering one. What can you reflect on over the past 16 days?
Sure. So firstly, thank you so much for having me and all of my colleagues over the past 16 days. It's been such a wonderful experience, and we've extracted so many amazing lessons from all the listeners that have engaged and shared and registered to be part of the community. I mean, I think my biggest takeout is that there are so many people who are making a choice to do something differently and to make a shift. Because I think we all know how bad the situation is, and we're feeling frustrated. Like, how do we make a change?
Sure.
And what's really, really encouraging is to see the amount of people and communities and groups that are coming together, doing some fascinating things to make those needed shifts.
I think, I'm so excited. You know, when I had the conversation with Ronelle from Grit last week, I was so excited because I left the conversation, and I think the listeners also left the conversation feeling empowered. But oh my goodness, I have this tool. This is something that I can use. And there's safety measures that are in there, you know, in terms of how the coding is done, how I interact with the app. It's so simple, but it also is sort of intuitive. It thinks for me in any situation. Interestingly enough, I've got my niece that's coming to do her in-community service at Tygerberg Hospital, and she's going to be encountering communities that she isn't used to. She doesn't come from the Cape Town environment, going into communities like Olwethu, going into the Cape Flats as a female doctor. You know, I immediately told her to download the app, and you know, it's just a better feeling of safety.
100%. And the sad thing about these communities, you know, when we were prototyping the I Am Collective to test, is there something that would work for the communities? And we spent some time in Langa.
Okay.
And I had this fascinating interview with a lady who was running a wellness center that she had created to help people deal with their mental health issues. And there were 3 girls who were part of a group, and they were all on contraceptives, and they always carry condoms in their pockets for the eventuality when they will be raped.
Oh my goodness.
That's just the way of life in the township that they're in. And I was shocked to hear that is common in so many areas across our country, where girls are saying like, oh, well, you know, this is just how it is.
If it happens, I must be
100%. And it doesn't
when
have
it happens.
to exactly. And that broke my heart. I mean, I have a 15 and 16-year-old daughter.
Sure.
I can't imagine them waking up feeling that way just on their way to school. So, you know, what Grit does, what we do, is really to bring our resources together, because while we are technical platforms, we forget that the best resources we have is the people that are around us. And so the aim of what we're trying to do is to connect each other to each other in a way that's positive and empowering, because it's not something that you can navigate on your own. I've been through this myself. I was connected to a beautiful community of women who, through their stories and through their vulnerability, they completely unlocked me, and it changed my life. And that's what we aim to do, you know, because my story is your story.
Yeah, that's true.
And when you, because I mean, my family tried so hard to get me out of that situation. But only until I heard so many other women describing what was happening in their relationship, the exactness of their experience was shocking. I couldn't believe they were describing exactly what was happening in my home on a daily basis. And then that just like, oh my word, it's not me.
Alexis, so like that is so like such a profound realization and a reflection on the status of what is normal or what you think is because there's a sense of isolation and shame that comes with being in an abusive relationship, right? Lots of self-doubt, self-shame. I deserve this. Like, what am I doing wrong? How do I make it better? We touched on all those nuances with Dr. Rafiq, just how to reprogram that software in your brain that says, I am the reason, I deserve this, that sort of thing.
100%.
So there's somebody that's listening out there and that's probably seeing a bit of themselves in your story, that needs that sense of community. What do you say to that person?
That it's nothing. That at no point in time is there ever an excuse to be disrespected or to be hurt. Violence is never the answer in any way, shape or form. And I think that we're living in such a high level of violence, we've forgotten what violent language is and we allow it. We've forgotten just what violent behavior is, because it doesn't always have to be the extreme violence that we're seeing. It's those micro moments that start creeping in and become bigger and bigger. And if you feel it in your gut, that's a full sentence. Figure out the details later, but that's your spirit and your soul saying this is not the right space. And so if you don't know who to talk to, this is where our platforms come in.
Very important.
Just drop us a DM. Let's start the conversation to, tap you into the different resources that's available, because there are so many resources. That's the other thing that I discovered the past 16 days. Just there's so much that's available, but do you really know where to go?
Don't.
Exactly. And so, that's the point of registering. And so the link is still open. We're still inviting people to join. We've had such an amazing experience on Gagazi FM as well, where men were sharing their stories.
Oh, wow.
And so there's definitely a need. People are responding. And while 16 days has come to an end, I mean, this is not an issue that's
every day.
100%. And we're inviting people to just be reflective on how they're showing up. How am I occupying the space that I'm in? How much violent language and behavior am I allowing? Am I identifying? And I think this is where the stories that we share become so critical in identifying those spaces where, like, oh my goodness, I didn't think of it that way.
So important. So it's the www.theimcollective.co.za/heartf. We're going to be talking about how listeners can actively participate in the I Am Collective and contribute to this movement for change. We're also going to chat to really unpack the platforms like Grit, how empowering survivors to provide immediate support and really tap into the networks that Alexis is referring to. We're going to get to that. If you want to engage with us on our WhatsApp line, please do so. It's a final conversation we're having about this month, but certainly not the end of the conversation, not a full stop to it. So if you want to be involved, 082 222 1049. We'll get back to Alexis just after these. Also wrapping up an important conversation with Alexis with the I Am Collective. It is a conclusion of the 16 days of activism against GBV. I must say this may be a triggering conversation for some of you, so this is my official trigger warning. We've spoken about the power of storytelling and collective healing, and how being able to hear the stories of other people that are survivors emboldens you to really step into yourself and be able to step out of that abusive situation. Not saying it's a wake up one day, get up and go sort of situation. It is a process, as we have been discussing with a number of our guests over the past 2 weeks. But I'd like to highlight the importance of the role of data and research, in the work that you do with the I Am Collective and the different organizations you tapped into. How important is data and research in us actually conquering the scourge of GBV and femicide?
It's critical, because I think that everybody's experiences are so unique. And while there are many services that are available, that the context of understanding that impacts you, especially in your far more rural areas where you have a really strong cultural practice. Sometimes there's just a lack of understanding of what's happening in front of you. So the more people share their stories, they give us key data points to understand, okay, so this is actually the trends of what we're seeing.
Sure.
So we can work with teams like Dr. Locke to then say, okay, so if these are the core issues, these are the learning interventions that we can create. Because I mean, at the core of what we're trying to do is really facilitate self-healing.
Sure.
Because you know what Maya Angelou says, develop the courage to stand up for yourself and then stand up for someone else. And up until the time you can actually make the realization that something's wrong with me, it's very hard to move forward. So again, data is really important. The listener's experience help us understand what are the interventions that we need, where, how do they need to be packaged, what is the range, what's the age range of the people that we're dealing with. It's so complex, there's so many layers. So as an insights business, it really is the source of where we decide on what to do next, rather than me just imagining, oh my word, this would be a really interesting intervention. It's coming from the listeners. So all the stories that they've shared with us so far, we will actually now work on translating that into bite-sized learning pieces and then replay it as another story, right? But this time around, like Dr. Locke had it done, make you think about these things very differently. And so, the research is important. That's where the learning comes from. And we're excited to see more stories coming through from the listeners.
Interestingly enough, you said, so even in our conversation, I think on Monday, when we were having the conversation on GBV, there was a lot of feedback on the WhatsApp line around the fact that it's, and as much as the prevalence is females that are being abused, there's also now like a sense that men are being abused by their female counterparts, specifically within social environments, within where there's drug abuse, where there's alcohol abuse. There's a sort of economic abuse also that's attributed to females towards men. Any of those sort of stories that you've had to uncode come through over the past couple of 16 days?
Yes. Interestingly, we had quite a few shares on the Gagazi side from men, and this is an issue. And I think while there are many, many women who don't speak about what's happening to them, can you imagine how hard it must be for a man to raise this issue? And I think, again, this is how the platforms like what Grit's doing, what we're doing, provides that safe space. Shame thrives in isolation and silence. It will shut you down. And this is an opportunity for you to sit with the shame and just get it out there. Send us a message. The process of writing what's in your head and your heart. In actual fact, one of the heart listeners sent me a message saying, thank you so much for the opportunity for writing my story. It felt so good to get it out. And that's the point. Because once you get it out, it loses its power.
That's it.
Right? And then you can start identifying, okay, like what's my next? And all of us are in different situations. And so to your point, the research and the data, it's important. Where does it come from? The stories that listeners are sharing. And then from that place, we start building the interventions to make sure that it's relevant, it's culturally nuanced, it has the right language and tone. Otherwise, it's really, really hard to make impact if it's just generic.
Every scenario is different. Alexa says that the channel is still open. It's going to be open for a while, perhaps until January.
It's open all the time.
All the time. You can go to the imcollective.co.za/HeartFM, and you can then share your story, and somebody on the other side is listening, willing to help, is going to get you and partnered up with the right individuals as you journey towards your next. I want to talk about engaging communities to drive change. What roles can community members play in continuing the positive momentum that we've started in these 16 days of activism? How do we do it beyond this campaign period?
So Sure, there's so many. So I think an invitation for other community-based organizations who are doing this work to reach out. I mean, we happily provide them the use of the platform at no cost to mobilize in their areas.
Yes.
I think this is a gift that we have to share with as many as possible. For the individual, it's really about taking complete accountability and responsibility for the space that you stand in. Right? What am I seeing? What am I saying? What am I doing? What am I not doing? And then from that place, evaluate. what's my next.
Okay.
Because I think we all have a role to play. I mean, when we talk about every 26 seconds a woman is raped,
Sure.
and only 50% of incidents are logged.
Sure.
So how much more is it actually?
happening.
But when you say that stuff, like, what can I do about that? Like, really, at home, on my couch with my children, it's very far away from me. But there's actually so much that you can do, right? If you become a safe space and you know, like, gosh, if you're going to be around Alexa, she's not going to tolerate that language, she won't tolerate that behavior, you choke it out. So imagine if all of us stood up and arrived that way. And of course it's hard, especially when the perpetrators are in our family. But there is a way. And I think the point of the I'm Collective is to bring people together who are exploring what's the way.
Yeah.
How do I do this? Yeah.
That that's just like a big light bulb moment, and that you think you need this big platform in order to be the change and to effect change. But you saying, or Olwethu or Alexis being that safe space, that is enough. That is the change. So that when people move around you, whoever they are, they know that that behavior is not tolerated. 100%. So they can't ever show up like that.
100%. And I see it with the people that I've been working with, the I'm Collective, and my two of my colleagues. I mean, he always says, you know, because he's in investments, and that's a really formal, male-driven, I mean, lots of testosterone, and it softened him so much. I mean, it's like I had no idea how complicit I was in actually just not choosing to even pay attention. And when he started reflecting, he started identifying, especially in those social instances where there is always that one friend after that one beer who starts tapping into an area that's just disrespectful. Previously the choice was to be quiet. Now
he's just being
now
himself.
He's saying, like, dude, that is not okay. I'm not tolerating that behavior in my house. And he actually felt quite good about the fact that he said that. And so again, you know, we're building a community of people who want to show up that way.
Love that.
Yeah,
absolutely love that. It's a small big step that shapes how the whole community shows up in instances like this. Is there one message of hope or empowerment that you want to leave with the listeners as we end off this campaign? Just something that I can sit with, something that I can hang on to, whether I'm a survivor or whether I've witnessed GBV, whether I am a perpetrator of GBV. So I guess maybe it's 3 different messages because it's 3 different people that you're talking to.
You're not alone. I think this kind of situation, and again, I'm speaking from my own personal experience, while I had so many people around me, I actually felt like I had no one. And there is hope. And it really just starts with that first conversation and the choice. So make the choice. Have the conversation. If you can't talk about it, write it down. I promise you it will unlock you and it'll start flowing. Alexis,
thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the incredible work that I Am Collective is doing and will continue to do. And we're so proud to have partnered with you right here on Heart FM on this incredible journey. It's unlocked and empowered so many of our listeners, and certainly has empowered me, you know, mom to 2 girls, also, you know, friends that are raising boy children, the different types of conversations that are important for us to have in order to create a generation where this isn't a reality, where it's an anomaly, where it's something that's like, what? And we're all freaking out, as opposed to us being so desensitized to it because it's so prevalent. You can still visit the iamcollective.co.za/heartfm, as we are committed to taking a preventative approach to GBV and femicide in South Africa using research and real stories, the power of collective sharing. The I Am Collective facilitates these conversations to encourage healing and drive real societal change, and you can be a part of it.